Here we are in session number 6, looking at the last half of Nahum chapter 2, verses 7 through 13. The title, Defeat and Plunder. We're going to get a look at what God says will happen to Nineveh. So we're going to finish our look at chapter 2 and the activity relating to that defeat of Nineveh. The opening and decisive element of her defeat was seen last time as we looked at verse 6. Let's look at Nahum 2:6 again. The gates of the rivers are opened, and the palace is dissolved. So it was that God had said earlier that it would be through water and flood. They would be taken out by the waters flooding through the gates and underneath the wall itself, and the wall will crumble. So it'll provide no protection for Nineveh. God will take it out through what appears to be natural means. Of course, there are natural means controlled by God. Let's look at verse 7. And it is fixed. Means it's a done deal. She, Nineveh, is stripped. She is carried away, and her handmaids are moaning like the sound of doves. The cooing of doves is said to sound, if you hear it, very much like the sound of lamenting. So that's the picture here. Nineveh is stripped. Nineveh is carried away into exile, and her young ladies are mourning, lamenting the downfall of Nineveh, beating their breast, which was at that time a typical way to lament. Nineveh is lost. She's stripped of every vestige of value and importance. Her beautiful watered parks are going to be gone. Her lush orchards are going to be gone. Everything praised by Assyrians for their Nineveh is no longer, or will be at the time of judgment at least, no longer. The people are carried away into exile or scattered by the fighting. There'll be flooding. There'll be flighting, running away. The flood has brought death everywhere. The young maidens coo like doves, sounding every bit like lamentation. All is lost. Nineveh, famous for her water-related features, now looks like a pool from which water is quickly draining or flooding away. And this is, of course, going to be speaking of people, not water. Nahum 2:8, though Nineveh was like a pool of water throughout her days of glory, if you please, now they, the people, are fleeing. Stop, stop! But no one turns back. The image is a metaphor for the flood of its people running away from the scene of battle. The flood has brought death and destruction everywhere in the city. None turns back to defend her amid the chaos of battle. And frightened and stricken is the city. Isaiah described that kind of furor and fear. Let's look at Isaiah 13:8. And they will be terrified. Pains and anguish will take hold of them. They will writhe like a woman in labor. They will look at one another in astonishment, their faces aflame. They can't believe this is happening. They went out Then there goes out the cry to plunder the city. Looking at Nahum 2:9. Plunder the silver, plunder the gold. Remember, Assyria has been defeating nations and peoples for several hundred years and taking all kinds of booty in the process. Plunder the silver, plunder the gold, for there is no limit to the treasure. Remember, hundreds of years of booty stacked up in the city. For there is no limit to the treasure, wealth from every kind of desirable object. Assyria again had plundered her neighbors for hundreds of years, making her the richest city in the Mid-East. Her kings had bragged about the staggering amounts of gold and silver taken from the defeated. They look at some of the writings from Assyria that still exist, and they found the kings bragging about those things. Now she is being emptied herself of vast sums of goods of all types. Everything was being stripped away, and Nineveh was left. How was she left? In verse 10 of chapter 2, she, Nineveh, is emptied. Yes, she is desolate and waste. Her hearts are melting and knees knocking. Fear everywhere. Also anguish is in the whole body. All of their faces are grown pale. All signs of life and vigor are drained right along with the silver and gold. Disabling fear now reigns in Nineveh. And Isaiah 13:8 says something similar. They will be dismayed. Pangs and agony will seize them. They will be in anguish like a woman in labor. They will look aghast at one another. Their faces will be aflame. Very similar to what we read moments earlier. Assyrian kings again had bragged about their strength and their prowess as lions who terrify all within their reach. Sennacherib once said, he said, like a lion I raged. So even the kings are bragging about their prowess, their power, their military strength. Now comes a taunt. Look at Nahum 2:11. Where is the den of lions and the feeding place of the young lions, where the lion, lioness, and lion cubs prowl with nothing to disturb them? Where is it? It's gone. Nineveh's haven of security is no more. It has been destroyed. The strutting king of the jungle did as he wished and provided all he desired with no opposition. Not so in Nineveh any longer. Verse 12, the lion tore enough for his cubs, killed enough for his lionesses, and filled his lairs with prey. That strutting king was no more, because there is one whom the king did not take into account. He thought mankind cannot touch us. Well, there is one who can touch you. Verse 13 of Nahum, last verse in our set. Behold, I am against you, declares Yahweh of hosts. I will burn her chariots in smoke. That's kind of an interesting thought. We think of chariots being steel, but for weight purposes, evidently the Assyrian chariots were of wood, so they would go up in smoke. A sword will devour your young lions. I will cut off your prey from the land. You will no longer strut around as king of the jungle. And no longer will the voice of your messenger. This is the same God who continually reminded Israel of their power or their lack of it. Deuteronomy 5:6. I am Yahweh your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. He's always reminding people of what he has done, what he is capable of doing, who he was, in order that he be honored and worshiped. And now he tells them he was going to deliver his people once again, not from Egypt, but this time from the tyranny of Assyria. As Nahum had declared in the last verse of chapter 1, that's Nahum 1:15, behold on the mountains the feet of him who brings good news. And in this case, that was Nahum, who announces peace. Keep your feasts, O Judah, fulfill your vows, for never again shall the worthless pass through you. He is utterly cut off. Remember what we talked about? God was telling Assyrians and Judeans as well, Assyrians dominated you once, but never again. And that's not the only time such news was to be declared. Look at Jeremiah. Of course, this is between Judah and Babylon that Jeremiah is describing. Isaiah was essentially also. Behold, I am against you, O arrogant one. That would be against Babylon. Or against Judah. Let's see who he's talking about here. Declares Yahweh, God of hosts. For your day has come, this time, the time when I shall punish you. And they will not take from you even a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundations, but you will be desolate forever, declares Yahweh. Or in Ezekiel 5:8, therefore thus says Yahweh God, behold, I, even I, am against you. I will execute judgments among you in the sight of the nations. And Ezekiel 26:3, therefore thus says the Lord God, behold, I am against you, O Tyre, and I will bring up many nations against you, as the sea brings up its waves. So God's general warning to nations is not limited to Assyria or Babylon, goes up to Tyre, Sidon, and anyone who would decide that they could oppose God, Yahweh, and get away with it. And Ezekiel 28:22, and say, thus says that he's talking to Ezekiel, I would assume here, telling Ezekiel to say, thus says the Lord God, behold, I am against you, O Sidon, up there near Tyre, in Phoenicia, and I shall be glorified in your midst. Then they will know that I am Yahweh, when I execute judgments in you, Sidon, and I shall manifest my holiness in her. It's certainly not a wise thing to discount God's involvement when your plans go against his. That's fundamentally what he's been telling all these nations. You go against me, you interfere with my plans, you will pay. There will be judgment. So next time we're going to move on to chapter 3. We're going to move on to Nahum's wrap-up to the end of Nineveh. And then we'll move on to something else, maybe finish out all of the Minor prophets. I'm thinking about putting Jonah is the only minor prophet left in our series, and I'm thinking about finishing it so that I can go on and think about putting together something called the not so minor prophets. We'll see you.